let me tell you how to write some of these letters. Aleph is written in 3 strokes. First diagonal line, second, and a third. Beit is written with 2 strokes, horizontal followed by downward. And this is the key point. With the second stroke, you want to make sure to go beyond your first stroke. So it's a horizontal line. Don't stop at where the first stroke ended, and make sure to go through. With Gimel, you start with a half horizontal followed by a diagonal. Then your second stroke is going to come from halfway point of the diagonal line to the other way. Make sure that it's only a half horizontal on the top, not a full. With Dalet, you give a full horizontal line. Then you're going to give 1 vertical stroke downward. When doing this, you want to make sure that you're not starting from the end of the first line, because there's going to be Resh, which is very similar to Dalet. And the only difference is Dalet, the horizontal line, comes past the vertical line. With Hey, you're going to give a horizontal line followed downward. And with the second stroke, make sure that you don't go all the way. You need a space between the first stroke and the second stroke. This is because we also have a letter Chet. And the difference between the Hey and the Chet is that the Hey has a space in between the first and second stroke, and Chet doesn't. Vav, you want to make sure that you give a tiny stroke, half stroke, followed by a full downward stroke. As for Zayin, you start with a half horizontal line. The second stroke, the key here, is to make sure that you're writing from the middle of the first stroke. The reason being, sometimes when you start from the end of the first stroke, it will look like a Vav that we just wrote. With Chet, as we stated earlier, it looks very similar to Hey. And the main difference is the second stroke touches the first stroke. So we're going to start with the horizontal line followed vertically, and the second stroke will start and touch the first stroke. With Tet, you give upward, down, and just around. Yod is a very small stroke. It's almost like a comma. You just give. Kaf, we're going to learn both strokes. Let's start with the regular stroke. Here, you're going to start on the top horizontally, go down, and back horizontally. As you can see here, the difference between Kaf and Beit is that Kaf, the bottom horizontal line, is continuous with the other lines and not coming out. The Kaf final form will start with a half horizontal and a very long vertical that actually goes past your imaginary bottom line. With a Lamed, you go down a little bit horizontal followed by a diagonal line. With a Mem in its normal form, you start from the bottom, go up, over, and down, and just add a dot to it. With the Mem final form, you want to make sure that it looks squarish. Start from the top, go sideways, down, sideways, and up. The reason why you have to almost make it a square is because there's going to be another letter called a Samech, which will take the curved form. With Nun, you start with short horizontal line, down, short horizontal again. The final Nun, just like the final Kaf, will actually go through the bottom imaginary line, the boundary that we have. The difference between the Kaf and the Nun is that you make sure that the Nun only has a very short top horizontal. So you go like this, short, and down all the way. With Samech, you start at the top, go sideways, and almost give it a curve. And that will make the difference between the Samech and your Nun, a Mem, final Mem form, really clear. With Ayin, you have to make sure that both strokes go to the bottom. You have your beginning stroke all the way down to the side, and your second stroke starts from the same height and just touches the bottom right there. Pei is a little bit tricky. You want to make sure to write something that sort of looks like a Kaf, but in addition to this, you have a short arm that comes under, and in the middle. Like other final forms, you're going to notice that pei also goes through the bottom of the imaginary line. So you're going to start from the top, go sideways and down, and then you're going to give its characteristic arm. With sade, it kind of looks like an iron, so you have to make sure that you distinguish it by making sure that the middle, or where the two strokes come together, is in the middle. Sade begins with you writing a horizontal, vertical, no. You start by writing a diagonal and horizontal line, and the second line goes from top into the middle. With the sade final form, you're just going to give a vertical line past its bottom, and again, the second stroke is going to go from the top and meet the middle. With kof, even though this is not a final form, this is also a long form that goes through the bottom. You're going to begin with the rounded top and then a vertical stroke going downward. With resh, you're just going to give a horizontal and downward. You can see that the difference between resh and dalet is subtle. Dalet, the horizontal line just goes through. With resh, it's one smooth stroke from the top to down. With sin or shin, you're going to start by writing out the letter, then you're going to add the dot depending on how you want to pronounce it. There are different ways to write it, but how I like to write it is I write almost a U followed by the middle line that comes in the middle. Remember, if you put the dot in the right, that becomes a shin. To write a sin, you want to make sure to do the same thing, kind of a U, diagonal line, and a dot on the left top. This makes it a sin. For the final letter tav, you're going to notice that it looks very similar to the letter chet. The key difference between the chet and the tav is that the tav has the little kick at the end. So you want to make sure to have that so we can distinguish between those two letters. Tav begins with the top, go horizontal, followed by down. And the second stroke, you want to make sure that you touch the first stroke, go down, and a little kick. That's your tav.